In one of the most fundamental elections in recent history, EdTV would like to discuss the Tories' main threat, the Labour Party, led by Mr Jeremy Corbyn. We will work through the recently released manifesto, which Labour themselves are calling radical and responsible. Examining Corbyn's abilities, we will ask, can he safely guide us through our Brexit? And question, why is it that this man faces so much opposition from even inside his very own party? So, straight into the manifesto, which was controversially leaked prior to the official release date. This has been carefully constructed and built with the intention of creating a country that is for the many, not the few. It entails some really exciting changes for the country, some very large and, as they've said, very radical pledges. But I guess in a country that needs desperate measures, could it be extremity that will save us? And are some going to find that certain changes are just far too radical? So let's address their key pledges. In a promise to change education, they want to make a quality education more accessible to everybody from all walks of life. They see great importance in allowing every single child to have a decent start in life. And as a party, they greatly dislike Tory-favoured selective education. They would like to repair the damage that the Tories did when they cut funding for all pupils in schools during the last 7 years. By spending £25.3 billion on education per year, they will be utilising more than half of their total additional projected spend and are calling this decent and fair spending. So in essence, one of Labour's most important key values is to invest in our future via our children. By scrapping tuition fees, this will aid in a huge lift in young persons' debt in the future, rather than saddling them with pressure as soon as they leave universities and try and set off to make their mark on the world. Not satisfied with just educating children, they want to make learning accessible from cradle to grave, opening up new opportunities for people of all ages, allowing them to widen their horizons, and this will aid in our ever-growing economy. In terms of benefits, work and pensions, their intention is to rule out rises in tax and national insurance and also income tax for everybody, except the top 5% of earners. This is amazing because one of the fantastic things about Corbyn is that he's not afraid to dispute the growing level of inequality in the world, where 8 billionaires selfishly own the same amount of wealth as 3.6 billion of the world's poorest people. And this is where May differs catastrophically, wanting to keep all the money in the pockets of her financially endowed friends. So more tax for high earners and corporations, and a more vigilant eye on those filthy little tax dodgers. There's a plan also to boost the minimum wage up to £10 an hour by 2020, abolishing zero-hour contracts and introduce new protection for workers. They also are planning to extend maternity pay as well. Something Tories will not guarantee is the triple lock, which is a rise of a pensioner's income to keep up with the rise in inflation, something that is a key pledge from Labour. They want to show well-deserved respect to pensioners and will not be raising the age in which a pensioner looks forward to their retirement. The freeze on benefits will come to an end through Labour, as they deem this to be completely unfair. They plan to build 1 million new homes and will set aside half of these and make them available for social rent. However, our experience of the last Labour gave us a decrease in house building, a huge decrease of 45%, and also the house sales in England fell by 14%, and the amount of social homes fell by a massive 420,000. And the Tories did rectify this mess and established twice the amount of social housing available. But hopefully this time round, Labour have learnt from past mistakes. A very notable and important declaration in the manifesto is that the cuts in the NHS will come to an end. They wish to ensure safer staffing levels and reduce the horrendous waiting lists and limit trolley waits to a maximum of 4 hours rather than the 12-hour ordeal that we currently have. They want to create a publicly provided NHS and end privatisation. If instated, they're going to spend £37 billion over the next 5 years and claim that they'll afford this through taxing the higher earners. A well-needed £5 billion will go into frontline care, rebuilding of hospitals with £1 billion capital funding, ensuring that they are fit for modern day, which we now know is crucial after the recent cyber attacks. A simple introduction of free hospital parking will also be hugely welcomed. Public services will benefit in a boost of 10,000 more police officers and 3,000 more firefighters. And there's much to be said in terms of the effects a Labour government will have when it comes to the safety and security of the country. They are claiming that this is actually their first priority. The stance that Corbyn intends to have differs greatly from Theresa May. He is not as trigger happy for a start, and he is a firm believer that military action should always be a last resort. And some wonder, will he be too much of a pacifist, and will he lack that strength that he needs in order to stand up to other world leaders? He believes in a distinctively new approach in terms of conflict, and believes that it's actually time to step back and encourage some fresh thinking on the matter. Because let's face it, the current plan is failing miserably. His plan is to de-escalate nuclear tensions, and he is a huge advocate of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which sets out to prevent spread of nuclear weapons, and as an end result, this would mean complete nuclear disarmament. But in this day and age, that could be quite delusional and not a realistic eventuality. The UK's relationship with the likes of the US could see a really different dynamic being ushered in. Corbyn believes that Trump escalates confrontation and recklessly agitates already very dangerous global situations. And unlike May, he's not willing to wait for decisions from the White House and follow the US blindly due to their military strength. Corbyn has said that he believes holding hands with the likes of Trump is exactly what led to our involvement in disastrous wars in the Middle East. And this is not something as a leader he is prepared to do. And stances such as this has resulted in him being called a terrorist sympathiser. Corbyn himself does not condone the missile strikes in Syria, and he believes that as a country we wouldn't want boots of young men and women on the ground in Syria, as this is only going to contribute towards even more suffering and even more slaughter on both sides. Labour wishes to stand up for the people of Syria and pledges to push for war crimes to receive a thorough investigation, quite rightly. These are some bold claims in comparison to what the opposition believe is the right code of conduct. Now, especially if we look at Labour's past record and what America's little glove puppet, Tony Blair, brought to the world when he graced us with his presence as our Prime Minister. A defining moment in UK's history is, of course, our Brexit. An issue that could change so much for our country is exiting with a bad deal. Corbyn's been asked numerous times if he'd accept a bad deal, and he's just avoided this question as if it were the plague. And honestly, there's been no real clarity as to what our exit from the European Union intrinsically means for us, from either party. It does all seem really quite ambiguous right now. But what we do know is that Labour are intent on trying to ensure that we have tariff-free access to the European market, and claims that we can only base an immigration policy on the outcome of having this. But Labour are certain that having this trading relationship with Europe is crucial. By negotiating a deal to access a single market, Labour will preserve jobs and preserve rights and access. Corbyn believes in immigration levels based on fairness, and he commends what an absolutely fantastic contribution to society people from outside of the UK have made towards the likes of the NHS, our industrial sector, education and transport. The Labour government wished to expand our own economy, creating our own national investment bank, investing in our infrastructure and industries, and create thriving economies throughout the country and not just in a few select areas. Our railways will be taken back and will once again be under public ownership. We'll regain control of water by reinstating regional ownership as well. Now that all sounds great, doesn't it? But I can't help but feel like, compared to where we currently stand, the majority of these promises are unrealistically far-fetched, and this is probably why their manifesto has been labelled as radical. In a perfect world, most of the general public would welcome everything Labour wished to provide us with. But with history proving that governments promise the world and they never deliver, and with what we've seen in terms of Trump, there is that possibility that the general public could vote Labour in, and then once they gain full control, they could go back on absolutely everything that they've said and end up being worse than the Tories, if that's even possible. I mean, all of the commitments, and are they costed and funded properly? And as a party, Labour have demonstrated trouble within the party itself, with members leaving based on Corbyn's conduct and not showing him the support a party leader respectfully deserves. What I will say about Corbyn is he is pro-country rather than pro-party, and he truly is a voice of the people, and you're more likely to find him making his way home from work on the tube rather than being chauffeur driven around in a Bentley, proving that he is true salt of the earth, feet on the ground kind of guy. Where the Tories are pro-party and act strong against the weak and weak against the strong, Corbyn seems consistent in that sense and shows that he does possess strength that we require of a leader who will stand up for the unheard or weak and will not tolerate injustice. He even has a long history of speaking out against his own party for reasons I personally agree with. The guy always handles torment so coolly and is unaffected by what's written about him in the media or the public's opinion on him personally. He just wants a change, and he wants the country to stand with his idea for change, not him, based on personality. He only became a leader of the party 18 months ago, and many question if it should be him going forward. But his rallies alone are proof that he has so many behind him, and every rally that he does, the number of attendees grows. He is confident in his policies and pledges, and he's more than happy to answer questions and speak with the general public, and he is desperate to go up against Theresa May in debate. But it seems the only way that May is comfortable doing that is in front of the House of Commons, surrounded by the rest of her party. And what does that say? All I know is that Corbyn presents an opportunity for something else. Let's just hope that, should he get elected, that he follows through on all of his promises and he isn't another wolf in sheep's clothing.